Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Callie Mersman. I'm the Senior Strategist for Transit and Mobility in Mayor Bibb's office at the City of Cleveland. Before we get started too much, I know it's a little bit hot out here. There is some water off to the side. Please help yourself should you need it. On behalf of Mayor Bibb, I thank you all for being here today. I know that some of you traveled from other cities and other states. Welcome to Cleveland. I'm sorry that it's not a more cheerful occasion for your visit, but this is a very important occasion, and so we're honored by your presence and by the advocacy and vision of Laura and Bob and Ben in bringing us here together, and also what we're going to talk about today and how that will impact other families in our region. I also want to thank partners that we have here today from Bike Cleveland. We're joined by Jacob Van Sickle and Jenna Thomas, who are advocates for safer streets, as well as Patty Nylands, who will be talking a little bit later about survivor supports that we are working to put in place here in Cleveland. All of this came together in a partnership and collaboration to honor the memory of Danielle and also establish a memorial sign program for people who die from traffic crashes. Our goal here is to honor those who lose their lives in traffic crashes on our streets and also to raise awareness in the hopes that this number will decline to zero and families will not have to suffer as this family has. So I'm going to hand it over first to Laura and Ben to share about Danielle. Then we'll share a little bit more about some of the initiatives we have in place and the progress that we're building through these partnerships.
Thank you all for being here today. It means so much to have you here. And thank you to Callie and Jacob for all the work you have done and the help you've given us for this memorial dedication sign to Danielle. We hope that drivers will see it, will think of Danielle, and pay attention, recognizing their responsibilities as drivers. We want them to see it and think it and pay attention, not only at this intersection, but everywhere they're driving. This is a memorial sign with a message. Pay attention so that no other family goes through what we go through every day without Danielle. Thank you very much.
Hi, baby. Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin Chronister. Danielle was my wife. Before I begin, I'd like to point out that the views and opinions I express today are solely my own and have not been approved or vetted by anybody and should not be taken as the official stance of any person or organization other than myself. Writing this has been a massive struggle for me. It's been 2.5 years since the worst day of my life, and in that time, my whole world has changed. I often tell my students that adult life is weird and only ever seems to get weirder. The last few years have been entirely surreal, with lots of nightmares and further tragedies, more lost loved ones and friends, more heartache and trauma. Death and hardship are constant traveling companions of all of us, it seems. In contrast, there have also been some truly beautiful moments, like my engagement to a lovely human being who is here supporting me today, and the birth of our daughter 8 months ago, who has become the single greatest driving factor in my life. My daughter carries a part of Danielle's name with her, and I like to believe some portion of Danielle's spirit or energy is acting as my daughter's guardian and mentor, and also helping make her a little extra noisy right now. All of this is to say that while tragedies like what happened at this intersection on November 3rd, 2021 are not necessarily the end of all life and hope for the surviving family members, however, the incredible hole that is left in their wake is impossible to fill. Not a day goes by that I don't think about and miss Danielle. I still see things that make me laugh and that I know Danielle would enjoy, and it still takes a moment to remember that I can't call her or message her anymore. When my fiancée said yes after I proposed, the first person I wanted to call was Danielle. I knew she would have been proud of me and happy that I was happy. I also know that Danielle would scold me for not using this opportunity to fully illustrate the need for change. The fact is, this entire event, lovely as it is, shouldn't be necessary. We should not need to increase awareness or get out the message that driving cars and trucks into pedestrians is bad. There is no one over the age of 5 who is confused on this issue. Cars hitting people is bad. We all get that. So why are we even here? Because unfortunately, while everyone agrees that people being hit by automobiles shouldn't happen, it still does, and much more often than you might think. While the total number of pedestrian fatalities each year isn't statistically large when compared to the total population of people who live and work in this town, such preventable tragedies have an outsized impact on the community each and every time. Danielle's death affected hundreds of people, especially young people here in Ward 7. Danielle's school was just steps away from here. Her students at MC2 STEM weren't the only ones to feel the trauma of her passing. Every student and staff member whose life she touched was impacted in some way by her death. I am also a teacher in CMSD, and my students over at the Cleveland High School for Digital Arts were affected as well, not just that year, but the following year too, as their teacher was, understandably I think, a little bit out of his mind. And then, of course, all the prior students Danielle had taught at both schools, many of whom were devastated to learn what happened by watching the news that evening. I received messages from so many people, too many to even fathom at the time, but the message was consistent. No one could understand it. That's because, of course, there is no understanding to be had. Sometimes things just happen. It's part of life, part of the risk we all take when we wake up each morning and leave our homes to venture into the world. Still, that doesn't mean there's nothing to be done. There are ways to mitigate that risk. Why we're not already doing them, I can't say. My hope is that this event today is only the beginning of a much more widespread adoption of the kinds of improvements that can solve this problem. The U.S. Department of Transportation has laid out several guidelines for enhancing the visibility of crosswalks and pedestrians using them. Improved lighting, for example, makes it easier to pick out pedestrians in the crosswalk. Additionally, setting the stop line further back from the intersection can significantly improve sight lines for larger vehicles, such as the one that killed Danielle. When we moved downtown from Cleveland Heights, we downsized to only having one car. Danielle's dream was to get a bike and be able to ride around to handle her daily errands. Unfortunately, that just wasn't ever feasible. Instead, we found that walking downtown rarely felt safe because of the mass of cars constantly choking every intersection, and the near permanent construction in certain high-traffic areas made traffic patterns so confusing that we continually saw drivers doing wildly unsafe things to correct for missed turns or to create parking spaces where none were legally available. We never shopped at the Heinens downtown, we rarely ate at the restaurants, and even stopped collecting our prescriptions from either of the pharmacies closest to us. If you have to get in a car to safely traverse the area, but there's also nowhere to park, you might as well drive somewhere else. Walking to work was the one part of that original downtown dream Danielle got to keep. It was a straight shot from our building just a few blocks north of here to her school. Her path had relatively light traffic most days, and she loved the freedom she felt in not having to fight for parking or shield herself from the city she loved in the hermetic bubble of a vehicle. Of course, ultimately, that dream turned into a nightmare. On the morning Danielle was killed, the man driving the truck that struck her was not under the influence of alcohol or other substances. He was not distracted by a cell phone either. Ultimately, he just didn't see her as she was crossing the street, in the sidewalk, with the right-of-way. The truck was tall, Danielle was short, and the driver wasn't paying close enough attention. I don't think memorial signs like those we're posting today would have done very much to prevent this. Instead, these signs serve primarily as a reminder of how much more we can and should be doing for the pedestrians and cyclists in this town. According to Bike Cleveland's 2023 crash report, 550 Clevelanders were struck by cars last year, including 9 fatalities. Borrowing ideas from Bike Cleveland and also from ODOT, 3 suggestions stick out in my mind as priority improvements that must happen as soon as possible. We can improve our reporting practices for OH1 reports and other data crucial to making knowledgeable, intentional alterations to our traffic systems. We can upgrade and update our intersections with better lighting and better sight lines. We can insist that large trucks use side guards, otherwise known as lateral protective devices, to prevent pedestrians from being pulled under and into the path of the truck's wheels, as Danielle was. Over there. Ultimately, nothing can bring Danielle back. It's possible that no amount of improvements in engineering, technology, or policy could have prevented her death that morning either. And yet, we must still try. Case in point, we must still try to make it safer for the next person to step into a Cleveland intersection. There is no good reason not to work to make our streets safer. There is no excuse for doing absolutely everything, for not doing absolutely everything we can to make sure all our loved ones make it home safe every night. There is nothing that should stand in the way of our community working together to solve this terrible problem. 9 fatalities last year. 9 families just like mine that will never again have a chance to see their loved ones smile, hug them, or simply get a text reminding them that they are loved. That is unacceptable, that is shameful, and that must change.
Thank you, Laura, Bob, Ben. I didn't have a chance to know Danielle, but her impact is obvious when we talk about her students, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have worked with you and see how her light shines on through the work that you all are doing in your advocacy. I also want to let you know that Danielle's presence has been very felt in our meeting rooms and in our work in City Hall. A lot of times, a lot of our conversations and our projects feel very technical. They're about concrete, they're about inches and feet, technical details, and sometimes they're about delay, congestion. But when you think about life, when you think about Danielle, that serves as a moral compass. Safety is the most important thing, and that is what is guiding our decisions, our priority, and our work to speed up the progress that has been too slow. We do a lot of community engagement at the city, and I think that there is a certain amount of driver brain that is permeated in our culture. We often hear from people that they don't want to wait in traffic, they don't want to wait for inefficient signals, and I've been reflecting on that a little bit recently. I think there's no other aspect of our life that we try and make as efficient as possible where we're worried about 5 or 10 or 90 seconds as sometimes when we're trying to get somewhere. And so that is also something that we're reflecting on quite a lot. The cost of seconds is nothing. It's negligible. We spend many, many seconds on our phones, talking with folks, preparing meals. That's part of life. And so is the ability to get places safely. Although this sign program is not a solution to the problems that we have on our street and does not substitute for more ambitious action, it is a reminder. And this program really does make the real cost, the lives that are lost on the street, visible to people who are using our streets. Our hope is that as we continue the work of making design improvements, as we work through process improvements to speed those up and invest more and more money into bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements on our streets, that these signs also help raise awareness and consciousness, help change how people think about their time and their responsibility on the street, and the impact that just a few seconds can have on the lives of loved ones. So from the City of Cleveland, we are happy to share today that we are launching this memorial signage program. This came out of a request from Laura and Bob at the World Day of Remembrance in November. We've been collaborating since then on putting these details in place and establishing a request process where families can come to the city and work with us to put similar signage like this in areas of traffic fatalities around the city to, again, increase that awareness, increase that consciousness. Our hope is that we get to a point where there are no families left to come and make that request to us, and that will be our driving motivation and our driving priority as we continue to do our work. In addition to the signage program, there are other survivor support activities happening in our community with our organizational partners. I'm going to introduce Jacob Van Sickle of Bike Cleveland to come up and talk about one of those things, the Northeast Ohio chapter of Families for Safe Streets.
Thanks, Callie. Thanks, everybody. I'll start by saying I didn't know Danielle either, but I had the opportunity to get to know Laura and Bob really well, and I appreciate their passion and their work for ensuring that this doesn't happen to another family. So my name is Jacob Van Sickle. I'm Executive Director at Bike Cleveland. We're the region's bicycle and pedestrian advocacy organization. Thank you all for being here today in honor of Danielle Chronister to launch this important initiative that aims to make our streets safer for everybody and support our community members who have been impacted by traffic violence. This year alone, we've tragically lost 9 members of our community who are simply biking or walking. And I'll remind you, Ben said we lost 9 pedestrians and cyclists last year. This year alone, 6 months in, we've already lost 9 people. Each of these lives matter deeply to their families and friends and our entire community, as we can see from everybody here today. Through our advocacy and in partnership with the City of Cleveland, we've established this memorial signage program. But these signs not only honor the individuals like Danielle who have tragically lost their lives, but also raise the awareness of the epidemic of traffic violence on our city streets and the effects that has on our families. We too wish this program didn't have to exist. It serves as a powerful reminder for the community of the lives lost and the urgent need for change. But raising awareness is just the first step. We need leaders and decision makers at all levels of government to implement physical changes to our streets to calm traffic and save lives. There are dozens of proven safety countermeasures, as Ben mentioned, at our disposal to improve street designs, ways to improve street crossing, ways to improve bike lanes, ways to improve intersections by forcing cars to slow down. We're thrilled to see things like speed tables and new crosswalk coming down the pipeline in the city, but we need bold and rapid action to meet our goal to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries on our city streets by the year 2032. We urge all community members to join us in making these changes. One way to get engaged is through our new Northeast Ohio Families for Safe Streets chapter. To talk about this support group, I'd like to invite Patty Nylands up to talk a little bit about that.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, Laura and Bob, Ben, to this wonderful dedication to honor Danielle's memory. Like Jacob here, I didn't know Danielle, but I've gotten to know a little bit more about her through my work with Laura. And like Danielle's family, I too know the pain of losing a loved one to a traffic crash. My husband of 45 years, who was also my husband, who was also my best friend for 50 years, was killed while riding his bicycle on Lake Road in Avon Lake in June of 2019. It's because of that I'm here today. It's because of that I continue to be involved in as many of these events as I possibly can be. Randy was struck by a drunk and speeding driver who never slowed down and who left the scene. That driver was later caught. She was a 63-year-old woman, drunk and speeding on a roadway that has a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. Randy died of his injuries several hours later. I had to identify him at the hospital by his hair, his hands, and his feet because he was so unrecognizable. That is how I've gotten involved with this organization. He was an avid cyclist since his youth, and he was doing all the right things while he was riding. He wore bright clothing, he wore a helmet. He had lights on the front and the rear of his bike. He only rode during the daytime. He rode in the bike lane and only on roads with a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or less. The only comfort I have from that crash is that he was riding along Lake Erie, where he spent many, many hours racing on sailboats, and in the city of Avon Lake, a city he truly loved, where he volunteered on the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission for over 25 years. Bike Cleveland was there for me from the beginning of my loss, providing support as we maneuvered the legal process and our grieving. Through them, I've used my voice to speak up for all vulnerable road users and demand change. These crashes are preventable. preventable with better design of our roadways for all users, vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. While our nation has done much to encourage and develop safe technology for vehicles and the passengers inside them, limited improvement on our roadways and our laws has occurred to help those outside of the vehicle. I have 2 examples to relay to you. There is an 8-mile stretch, uninterrupted stretch, on Lake Road from Huntington Park and Bay Village all the way west to Sheffield Lake on Abbey Road. And this posted speed limit there is 35 miles per hour during that entire stretch. But due to the lack of any stop signs, no stop lights, no narrowed lanes or roundabouts, speeds easily pick up along that stretch, reaching 50 to 55 miles per hour. That 8-mile stretch is made up of primarily residential homes, a few churches, a school, a few small retail establishments, and several parks on the north side of the street. It's treacherous to cross the road as a pedestrian, let alone ride it as a cyclist. Because it is a state route, the local municipalities are unable to lower the speed limit from the posted 35 mile per hour required by Ohio code. We are working to change the responsibility of setting speeds on state routes from the state to the local municipalities when the routes go through those municipalities. Who better knows what speed we should utilize than the community people? However, the wheels of change at the state level turn slowly, and it costs money. We are united in our effort to accomplish this, regardless of the time it will take. My next example involves the punishment for vehicular crimes in Ohio. In my case, aggravated vehicular homicide. It carries a maximum sentence, or a minimum sentence of 2 years and a maximum sentence of 8 years for driving drunk and killing someone. Compare that to an aggravated robbery charge, which carries a 3-year minimum and a maximum of 11 years. So you can get in your car under the influence and kill someone and receive no more than 8 years as a penalty. But if you use a gun while robbing someone, but you don't kill them, you are looking at a maximum of 11 years. First offense drunk driving is usually met with 3 days in jail and a $500 fine, though the jail time is usually waived if one attends a driver intervention program. I ask, why is our legal system so tolerant of drunk driving? With Bike Cleveland, we have established an advocacy chapter of Families for Safe Streets, which originated out of New York and is rapidly gaining traction throughout the United States. We are made up of volunteers who are primarily victims of road crashes, family, friends of those killed or injured, or the injured party themselves. We are here to help others navigate the medical, the legal, the insurance, the press request, and providing resources for taking care of oneself. Things that are hard to deal with when you are dealing with injuries or the loss of a loved one. And through our efforts, we hope that people join us to promote change within our communities for safe roads, safe vehicles, and safe speed limits. Statistics indicate that each day nearly 115 people die from a road crash in the United States, and an average of 6,300 people are injured daily. Data shows that 9 out of 10 pedestrians will survive being hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles per hour. At 35 miles per hour, only 5 of the 10 would survive, and at 40 miles per hour, only 1 of the 10 would survive. The economic impact of road crashes is estimated to be somewhere between $242 billion and $473 billion annually. Imagine what could be done with that money if we can enact change on our roadways. The knowledge of what can be done to improve safety is available, as Ben indicated, but change costs money. Advocacy is the lifeblood of change, the force behind positive shifts in our society. It's about standing up and making your voice heard for the causes that matter. It is only through the efforts of many that change can occur. So please consider joining Families for Safe Streets by going on to the national website of ffss.org or by going to the website of Bike Cleveland and connecting through their link. I hope I've given all of you something to ponder as you safely return home today. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to share this information with you.
Thank you, Laura, Bob, Ben, Jacob, Patty. Thank you all for joining us today. To our media partners, all of us are willing to speak in more detail after this. We'll stick around. I wish everyone safe travels, and thank you for your presence.